if people are watching and oh, here we go. Maybe this is how it works. I'm live. Let's play the intro again.
There we go.
Okay. Right. So I'll turn off the stream back of my own voice so I can't hear us in 30 seconds time. But yes, everybody who is watching and everyone who's watching on the recorded version, welcome to the first ever live stream of Chatter with Houston Wade and William Steele. Yeah, guys, welcome. And yeah, welcome everyone that's listening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Really glad to be here.
So for anyone that doesn't know, actually, William is currently going to be the editor of my book, which is going to be the topic of the discussion for this entire interview or live stream, however you want to describe it, called To the Moon, the GameStop saga. And so we got in touch because I had talked to him on a podcast a few months ago and then decided I needed an editor for my book. And he was very happy to do so. And Houston was the first interview I did on the topic, and the interview really blew up. And he started a YouTube channel about it, so you can check out like the previous interviews and stuff. I will put them in the description for anyone who's watching the recorded version. I'll do that later. But yeah, guys. So basically, I want to go over my book, To the Moon, the GameStop saga. I've watched a couple of different mainstream journalists talk about this as a topic for like books and films and documentaries and everything. And aside from the guys making the Ape Strong Together documentary, it seems like all of the mainstream journalists want to focus on January. And for me, that's like just the start of the story. Like, why do you think it is that is the focus for most of the mainstream when we're still here, like watching everything that happens every week, and they don't even realize that that's going on?
Yeah, I think that the mainstream news has not done a good job in explaining to the public that the squeeze is still ongoing. And so when people saw a stock go from $2.57 to $480 in January, they thought, oh, that's it. The squeeze is over. That was done. And the hedge funds have really been good at making sure the mainstream news like maintains that narrative. So I think that I was asked to be in the Netflix documentary, and they're still organizing how they're going to do that. And I think it might be like one of those documentaries like Icarus. I don't know if you ever saw that, where the bicyclist is trying to figure out if he can dope himself into being a better bicyclist, and then ends up becoming this whole story about getting the Russian doping doctor out of Russia so he can speak to the IOC, and brought down the entire like Russian Olympic Committee. And I think that the people who are working on the other documentaries are going to find themselves like having to shift gears halfway through their production unexpectedly, and that may be a good narrative for them to take. Because it's kind of like, oh, look at this twist in the middle. But the Ape Strong guys they know exactly what's going on from the get-go.
William, what do you reckon?
I would say it's kind of always been in the habit of the news to be, reporting after the scene, right? And they're going to highlight that as much as they can to capitalize on the hype, and of course, keep viewer retention and ratings. I think that has something to do with it for sure. And I also think it has something to do with the fact that like it's a topic that not very many people are interested in continuing the discussion for, or at least are not incentivized to, other than the niche audience that we have in between Reddit, Twitter, the people that are participating, the participants.
I saw a guy commenting yesterday that he feels like it's become like a funnel. So you had all of the interest coming in like January, and it's like funneled and filtered it down to only the most dedicated of people, and that it's like it's basically like filtered out anyone, that plus Satoshi, obviously, on Super Stonk. And I don't know if they've applied it to r/GME. But that plus Satoshi has just meant that there is only the most dedicated people left, which I guess means that we've got the highest quality of discussion, theoretically, going on about it.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I
one
would
of the
imagine
things,
that the paper hands have shaken free now. With the ups and downs, the people that were in it to get a quick buck, they're done, and the only people left investing are like the hardcore core. But even then, Get It Got on Reddit, he funded a survey, and that survey basically suggests that Americans alone own about 200 million shares of GME, and that's a lot. and it's 4 to 5 million people that are invested in this, and that's still a large market. Like if you can get 4 to 5 million people watching something in particular, that's a huge win for that media outlet. So there is an incentive to talk about it more in the mainstream news, but I think that the powers that be are just unaware of how large, how many adults in America actually are participating in this.
There's definitely like a ridiculous number of people involved, and I foolishly posted on Super Stonk about like how can we figure out, can we get like a register of who owns the shares to try and figure out like how many shares retail owns, because in my mind like retail owns the float. I don't know what you guys think.
Oh yeah, definitely, and then some. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I can't understand how it wouldn't be the case. Basically, I've yet to see anyone explain to me why retail don't own the float, because I remember reading like posts a couple of weeks ago that it was like people saying, "Oh, I've doubled my position since January," and then someone go, "Oh, you've doubled your position? Well, I've quadrupled my position," and then the next comment is like, "Quadrupled? I've 10x my position," and it just kept going down like that. And I was like, there was someone who said that they'd increased their position by like 7,000%, and I was like, "You madman! Like, you're a hero! Like, what have you been living on?"
Peanuts and like charity, probably. Yeah. Oh, it's wild because in before the January squeeze, the shorts had to cover 270 million shares, and that was the estimate by what's his butt, who owns Interactive Brokers. And since then more people have jumped in, millions more have jumped in and bought more shares. So there's no way that that retail owns less than that now. It's just not possible.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's so one of the things that I felt like I wanted to cover in the book itself, as one of the main themes and discuss here, obviously, is the idea that this community has become a hive mind, and for me, so for anyone that doesn't know, actually, William, you're a better sci-fi guy than me. Do you want to explain what a hive mind is?
Yeah, just so you guys know, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the browser, but I'll go into the science fiction aspect of the hive mind. It's like mass psychology, right? I think that it's become more and more of an interest to study and examine, especially now that we have like such large amounts of data on how humans move like as a collective and what their decisions are. We're able to like put through that kind of lens of analysis on like a large data, big computation, how we're behaving, and we're discovering more about ourselves than we've ever been able to before. And it's allowing us a new lens, particularly in the marketing side of things. Like marketing companies are able to study how the collective like hive mind kind of bubbles out and behaves. Another aspect to it is a little bit more in the realm of creativity. I think what we're seeing is like a balancing of sorts. There has been where there is always suppression and the fight for freedom, particularly financial in this instance. I think that we're really, really seeing an opportunity for the middle class Americans who are able to communicate with each other at such a rapid pace to really seize a moment together. And I think this has kind of been, I mean, how long's the stock market been around? Almost 100 years now, right? And a little bit over or a little bit under, but this market's been manipulated for such a long time. This is definitely, I think, if karma is a karmatic response, and it's happening as a collective, all of us.
I mean, Suzanne Trimbath actually and Lucy Commissar both discussed the history of naked shorting, of institutional capture, of corruption in the financial markets, all the way back to the crash of 29. So it is literally the story of the corruption of financial markets is as old as the financial markets themselves. Which kind of begs the question: is it possible to make these markets without corruption?
I don't think so. But what the markets require is they require hefty regulation. I know that there's like purist capitalists out there that think we need this laissez-faire system, but every time we move that direction, we see huge boom and bust cycles. And those boom and bust cycles, what they serve is to basically wipe out more and more of the population of their wealth and concentrate it higher and higher and higher into a core group of people. And it works great for those 400 families or whatever that win every time there's a boom bust cycle. But John Maynard Keynes, I talked about this a couple of months ago, but John Maynard Keynes, while a lot of these laissez-faire capitalists may hate his guts and a lot of like Marxists may hate his guts, what he managed to do was develop a system that kept the market within these bounds, so that it kept this slow, like 1 to 5% growth that would just kind of, dip in and out, but always had an upward trend for year over year over year. And it probably was the one thing that saved the United States of America from pushing into communism. If after the Great Depression, World War II, the economy still stunk to high heaven because there was no regulation, there was no quantitative easing, there was that you didn't have these regulators kind of keeping everything in bounds and keeping people in check, we probably would have been like, hey, screw it, let's just seize the rights of production and move that direction. And so the framework of capitalism today was saved by that Keynesian model. And from 1980s onward, there's been a push in particularly the US, the UK, somewhat in some other Western nations, to like remove those safeguards, those like bits of regulation. Oh, you know what? We should let the banks start playing in the market again. Oh yeah, we should forget regulating the water and electricity. Let's just let that go with pure market mechanics. And it just eats away at an economy, just destroys the foundational basis upon it. And we need to have somebody watching these psychopaths and sociopaths at all these hedge funds and big financial institutions, because they have so much money and so much power that if they get an inkling and they see a window of an opportunity, they will just take over the world, and more than they already have. So that's kind of like my philosophy behind regulating these folks.
I mean, you're so like, you know what's really hilarious is that you talk about something that I just spoke to this economist Marky Thomas about, and it is this idea that we have had since the 1980s. The economy has gone from being about increasing the wealth and prosperity of everyone to increasing the wealth and prosperity of the top 1%. And when that happens, when you get such outrageous wealth inequality, you get people going, well, let's just tear the whole system down. What's wrong with communism? If I have nothing and after then maybe I have something, then sweet, that's amazing. And it's kind of corrupted the very like foundations of capitalism, in that what we see today as like capitalism is not like is not what people who discuss capitalism in a positive light mean.
Yeah,
this is just cronyism. William, what were you going to say there?
One thing that I've learned recently, because of one of the companies that I started, and in having to cultivate a particular kind of work culture and being more cognizant of what that means, corporate culture, I realized that companies are very much like tribes. And what we're kind of experiencing is like a tribal exchange of services and goods. And I would be curious to know y'all's opinion on if a hedge fund is another tribe, how does the government go about maybe influencing to some degree or another without negatively impacting the freedoms of the American, the positive education of the individuals at the helms of these institutions, and more so, it really, work culture, of course it starts at the head, but it's really impacted by the type of people that are brought together. Is there any kind of way that you guys might think, or any ideas, or have you guys heard anything about that, of maybe influencing it to be more positive, so that people in these tribes and these companies are more conscientious of even not just themselves and their impact on the society around them, but the impact that their culture is having, upon either that supply chain, if they're able to think at that level, or even more so, on a scalar level.
Can I just clarify what you're asking here, so I definitely understand? So you're
Mm-hmm.
asking, how do we change the culture of Wall Street, or essentially of like big business from the top down?
Yeah, or is it a top-down solution? Is it something that starts bottom up? I'm super curious on that. I've been really pondering that for the last couple of weeks.
I think it's difficult. There's, if you flip through a business publication, there's always some article once a year about trying to teach CEOs empathy, and and like corporate responsibility. And the thing is that there's such a large portion of people who gravitate to the top of these organizations who have cluster B personality disorders. They've got narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, borderline personality disorders, and they don't have it, and then they never will. At best, they can mimic it for their own personal gain. And my family, we've had so many like around the dinner table conversations about this stuff, especially now that my little sister is studying psychology. But it's like, laws don't necessarily exist for you and I. They exist to keep that 5 to 10% of the population who have no impulse control somewhat in line and have some way to do something about them. And the low functioning folks that have these personality disorders, they randomly knock an old man over the head, take his wallet, and get busted and go to jail because they have no impulse control. The high functioning ones figure out how to manipulate us and how to make us feel good that they're doing the right thing or whatever, and then they just totally flip a switch when they realize like there's my opportunity, and they'll screw us and climb the next rung of the ladder up. And those folks, they have, I don't want to call it emotional intelligence, because it isn't. It's like a manipulative intelligence. And you're not going to be able to teach them to care about other people. You just won't. You might be able to get them to mimic it, and to kind of play that role for a while. But I don't know if we can get them to do it. Yeah.
My counter would be like, it's not necessarily get them to do it because they want to do it. I'm talking putting in the framework and the structure to where there is no creative opportunity to seize necessarily. That would be something that would really interest me.
I think that's where we're going to have to like just clamp down with certain rules and regulations, so and make the punishment far worse than the crime. Because right now you've got groups like Citadel that can naked short like crazy and pause order flows and delay all these things, and they can make billions of dollars, and their fine will be like $57,000, and that's just like for the cost of doing business. What it needs to be is, if you naked short and there's a failure to deliver after 3 days, you owe 200% on what the price was that short was, and make it absolutely just brutalize anybody that violates these rules. And if you delay order flow by more than 2 days, you have to pay 300% of whatever the cost of the stock was. And so that these groups that are finding these opportunities can't just calculate in, okay, it's we're going to pay 0.3% on this deal. As long as we make more than that off of it, we're cool. It needs to be absolutely just punitive. And they will like cattle herd into the little fence and follow the rules then.
Nice.
We got some comments that actually agree with you, Houston. So Kung Fu Joe says you can change it by making it boring, hiring boring people and taking out the leverage. Um, and Frederick Miles says, pain is how you learn. Trust me, behavior won't change without criminal prosecution, which I kind of have to agree with. And it's something that Lucy Commissar spoke about as well. She just calls them crooks and mafia members and fraudsters and con men, and she's right, because that's who this industry tends to attract due to the just outrageous amounts of wealth that can be generated by having no empathy. Essentially, like if you have no morals, like you're gonna go far on Wall Street. And whilst that is the case, I guess you don't change it. So then this kind of brings us to something that I want to talk about, because we've talked about, like, these people are willing to break the law, and there's been discussions about there being manipulation of the subreddits, whether that's bots, shills. I know on Wall Street Bets there was accusations that mods had been bought off. I've seen posts coming across from 4chan with people claiming the same sorts of things that were going on, and this forms the basis of 2 chapters of my book, To the Moon, the GameStop Saga. Pre-order it in the description below. And so the thing that I often get when I talk to people about this that aren't embedded in the community is like, oh yeah, but why would the hedge funds bother? Why would they? Yeah, but that's like, how real do you think these accusations are? And what is your response to people who would just say, well, why would the hedge funds bother to go on Reddit, or why would they pay for people to do that?
I'll go because it's cheaper than actually closing their positions. I mean, if it costs you, $10 trillion to close your positions on just GameStop, it's going to be cheaper to pay a couple $100,000 here and there to buy people off, and that's it. I mean, they're already so deep in the hole. They don't have the cash to actually close his position, so they're gonna pay somebody at Motley Fool or Market Watch or Seeking Alpha or on find the price of some big name person on a board at Superstonk or whatever, and have them do their bidding. I mean, everyone has a price. I have a price. They can buy me off. If you just name the price. I mean, I will get paid twice because I'll go to the SEC and file a whistleblower complaint. but everyone has a price, and if they can, shell out a few $1 million here and there as sort of that cost of doing business to draw out or avoid ever having to cover or close these positions, they'll do it. And that's that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's the nature of the beast. There's so much money involved. I said that from that was always been my statement to people that say they can't do that, and I'm like, dude, there's so much money involved, you have no idea. Imagine a world where you wake up and you have so much money that it's just left to your creative capacity to solve problems and not you're not bottlenecked by resource. That's what these individuals have the opportunity to. That's the lens that they look through the world at, and for me, it's kind of cool just to imagine it, because you start to really think of all the creative things you can do, but then you think, oh man, they can do some crazy stuff.
Yeah, they really can. I mean, I find, and for anyone that doesn't believe that these things are even possible, so I've just got up some of the things that I've mentioned in one of the chapters of the book that I've already got. So in February 2014, Glenn Greenwald revealed that the NSA had a unit called JTRIG, the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group. And he put out a fantastic article, which again, I will link in the description below later for anyone that wants to check it out. That says that he found documents basically entitled "How Covert Agents Infiltrate the Internet to Manipulate, Deceive, and Destroy Reputations." And he says, amongst the core self-identified purposes of JTRIG are 2 tactics: to inject all sorts of false material onto the internet in order to destroy the reputation of its targets, and to use social sciences and other techniques to manipulate online discourse and activism to generate outcomes it considers desirable. Now, these tactics have also been found to be used by numerous different corporate entities. So there's absolutely no no denying that these tactics exist and that they've been applied by not just the NSA but by big corporations. Like there are intelligence firms the private intelligence firms that will do this for money. It's and just that alone should be enough to convince people that it's possible. And when you talk about the amount of money that's involved,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. There's that, and then there's like the opposite too. There's those like groups that will somehow SEO the bad stuff about you, like just drop it down in the Google chat by making all sorts of weird, random nonsensical articles about that have your name in it and stuff. And if the governments are doing it, the RIS in Russia, they have huge farms that do this all day long, and if governments are doing it, then there's also subcontractors for the governments that do it. And if those subcontractors are doing it for the government, they're also looking for other clients. And we can see it in tweets and Reddit posts and comments on YouTube and Facebook and things like that. But we also, it's been around since before that, because Jim Cramer was on video talking about how he takes graft to talk shit about a company whenever they give him the money. They cut him a check and he's like, yeah, I'll badmouth that company all day long and help you drive that stock price down to help the short hedge funds. So, that's a crime. And he admitted it on video and no one's ever done anything about it. And he still has millions of viewers every single day. And all these boomers like, oh, I'm going to listen to Jim and he's going to tell me what to invest in. And they get hosed 100% of the time. That guy is like the worst batting average. It's absolutely terrible.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that baffles me actually is that, and it happens in every realm, it's that the institutions as such, like the media in whatever sort of sector you want, you can have like the political media or the financial media or whatever it is that the amount of times they get it wrong, and then the next day they're just stating things and you're just like, oh, all right. It doesn't matter how many times they've got it wrong, their reputations remain intact. Whereas if there's like independent creators, or they can make like one slip up and that's them like tarred for life. Do you think that if or when the MOAS happens, they will lose some credibility for all of the FUD that they've been spreading for I don't know how long?
No. people will still, my dad's 84, almost 85, and every day he's like, oh, I saw on Google News this article that everything got covered in GME. And I was like, who wrote the article? He's like, oh, I read it on Market Watch. I'm like, there you go. Those media outlets, they're like literally owned by these funds that are trying to drive this stuff into the ground. And we saw weird things like with a Market Watch article where they announced a major ladder attack on GME 15 minutes before it happened. And they published it in their article like, oh, the price went down, $110 in just a few minutes. And then a few minutes later is when the actual ladder attack happened. So they're being telegraphed this information, and someone just made a mistake of publishing it too quickly. So, it's the obviousness with what they do, we see, but regular folks at home don't have the attention span or the knowledge base to really filter that stuff and look at it critically.
That's like that's why the hive mind of Reddit, Super Stonk, and the ape community has been so brilliant, is because you don't need 1, 2, 3 journalists who are maybe interested in this to watch the story constantly anymore. There are 10,000 people constantly watching the story and picking out maybe there's like 500 things that they point out in one day, right? I don't know, like short interest rates, dark pools, failure to deliver numbers, deep in the money or deep out of the money puts, or in the money puts, or we've got a couple of questions about those, which I will get to later for anyone who's waiting. But we've got this like brilliant hive mind creating or watching everything that's going on. And I think it's quite clear that people aren't going to get bored of this at this point. Like, they are going to pursue it until the hedge funds collapse or they lose all their money and access to an internet connection, basically. Like, those are the two ends of this, I think. Like, how have you guys viewed just the like evolution of that community generally?
Well, if you guys, I'll go. It really excites me. It really feel hopeful about the future because these platforms like Reddit and even I would argue some aspects of Twitter are finally starting to show that there are mechanisms that we can deploy as a collective culture that can be used for infrastructure integrity. Like, this is upholding some amount of integrity to the financial system, which up to this point has been infallible in every way that they've operated. I mean, like 2008, that wasn't a big enough, like, take it out and slap it in your face with it. Like, that was it for me, you know, when I watched The Big Short and when I was old enough to start comprehending what these things that were going on really were and the nature of the beast, it really saddened me. I think that's where that whole idea of like the generation below mine, and they have all like the Zoomers, and how they're just like, I get a lot of talk from older individuals that are like, the new generation, man, I don't know what's wrong with them. They just seem like dead behind the eyes. And it's probably because they're born into a world where they're able to have access to all this information so quickly and realize it can be very bleak at times. Whereas Reddit now and Twitter and all of these platforms and individuals like you guys and myself are really, it brings me hope. It brings me light and thinking that maybe TV was a learning process for us as a species. Maybe television and media control and the things that we're going through are just birthing pains of sentience in its own right. And hopefully we're on the path and we're progressing toward this day where maybe, you know, there's serious integrity and the people at the top of these institutions that provide our world goods and services would be leading as an example, and they might be able to, because these are also people that are coming on podcasts frequently whose, you know, private life and personal life blend into their public brand, and they're held, you know, to some degree accountable for their actions. And I really think that it warms me up, man. Everything that I'm seeing, it makes me inspired. It makes me want to continue to go after it and contribute, you know, economically, both at my local level, but also like with news and information and education as best I can with what I have, and collaborating with other individuals as well.
Yeah, prior to me getting popular, because I came on your podcast back in April, I spent a lot of time just internet searching, trying to just gather this information. And what's crazy now is that other people do it for me. Like, I wake up, yeah. I wake up and look at my phone and I'll have 50 messages with 50 different articles. Like, hey, check this out, watch this video, read this, do this thing. And like, I don't have to search for it anymore. They're doing it for me. And so, you know, my gift is that I educate. And so I absorb this information and then I regurgitate it in a way that other people can understand. A lot of it is really technical and uses a lot of lingo a lot of people don't necessarily get the definitions for. And I don't know, it feels like I should be laying on a bed with like palm fronds and someone's hand feeding me like bundles of information, and it's luxurious. Like, yeah, it like takes me hours a day. Yeah,
like Absalom from Alice in Wonderland. We just appear in, and he's just got the hookah of info, just
exactly, yeah,
everywhere.
Oh, that's brilliant. But yeah, no, it's fantastic because, like, and I talk about this in the book, is that we've got this situation where Reddit as a concept, right, is brilliant. Okay, and obviously it's fallible due to humans, but like the idea is that you get little communities focused on like a specific topic, like GameStop, for example, and then you get lots of people who are interested in that posting links, pictures, information, DD, memes, whatever you want there, and it gets sorted by the community. So the people who are interested in it, who have the most knowledge in it, are the ones who are like upvoting or downvoting the information. So that in itself is a fantastic little sorting process. And the front page of Reddit is the front page of the internet for a reason. They did a really good job on branding it in the first place, and then actually creating a system that is not perfect but worked. So like all credit to the founder whose name completely escapes me at the minute. The guy who's back at because he left for a few years and then came back as CEO. But then you get this community, because obviously in other things there has when it's not maybe as niche a topic, especially, you get what my best friend would refer to as casuals coming in and just saying stuff that's just blatantly not true, and just with such, I don't know, force that people are like, oh, well, maybe this guy's got a point, and it kind of it and maybe they upvote the wrong thing, or they downvote things that aren't true, or they like jump on bandwagons or buy into hype that's not there, or believe people that are shilling, or I don't know. Everyone's fallible, obviously. Like, this isn't me attacking people who have upvoted the wrong thing. But what GameStop and like Super Stonk especially has managed to do is to create a community that is so wonderful at using Reddit perfectly. Like, they have figured out the exact way to use Reddit to like discuss high level information mixed in with pure shit posts of amazing memes, and in a beautiful mix. But they found a way to do it in I can't even express how impressed I am with it, because I used to be a little bit more depressed about the future of the internet. But now I feel way more positive, like watching this unfold. Like, even if they're wrong, because I don't think they are, but even if it turns out they're wrong, they've still managed to create a way to use Reddit that I think even the most like optimistic tech utopians would never have imagined.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to say. It would be my background, like in undergrad, was computer science. And it's been very interesting, like you said, to see people optimize how they're using that interface and how they're using Reddit very, very effectively. It would be interesting actually to see if there couldn't be some kind of maybe niche, I don't know, grad program that focuses on the study of how mass media is interacting with those types of programs, and how they might be able to optimize those types of systems of thinking that they're using when they're trying to interpret this information from such a large community. That would definitely be something that would interest me.
Yeah, it's so I'm going to move on to some of the questions here that we've had from people in the comments. One note, actually, interestingly, reverse repo is 859.9 billion today, so that's up.
So it shrunk a little bit.
Yeah,
900 billion or something last week.
Yeah,
so.
But I mean, it was back at 700 for a few days, 700 something there for a few days, and then it's bounced back up a little bit. But I mean, you look at that and you go, well, you know, it's not the record. Like, we've become so desensitized to normal numbers. Like go back a month. Like, the record was like 300 billion.
Yeah, my guess is we had that shrink because with the reverse repos, the banks are borrowing these securities from hedge funds, and they're short-term loans. They might have only a month before they've got to go out and buy more on the market to repay their loans. So that's probably why we saw a shrink, was that these things came due. But you know, as far as I know, the Treasury still really isn't issuing any new bonds. So we still might be seeing a squeeze on the bond market if the reverse repo keeps going the way it is.
And Houston, I was going to ask that to you. Might know a little bit more about that. With the repo market, I was under the impression that some of these loans were only like most common 48-hour, 72-hour. You know, I didn't realize that they could go up to a month. That really changes the way that I look at things.
Yeah, they're generally short term. So the regular repo market is when the hedge fund needs cash. And so they say, hey, bank, I need cash. The bank's like, give me collateral. And so they give usually those municipal and treasury bonds to the banks because those are stable. And the banks will give them cash, and the hedge funds do whatever deal they need to do, and then they pay back as soon as they can. and get their bonds back. And then in the reverse repo is when the banks need cash and they say, hey, give me your treasury bonds because the Fed's going to pay me for them. I'll give you a negative interest rate, basically. So that's
it's crazy.
And
it's crazy.
and the banks are, what the banks are banking on is that interest rates for these 10-year notes are going to go up. And if the interest rates go up for those 10-year notes, the price goes down. And every week, Jerome Powell comes out, or someone from the Treasury, or that's Jerome Powell now. I can't remember who's in charge now. And they come out.
Is it not Janet
Yellen? Janet Yellen, yeah. Janet Yellen comes out and she's like, "We're not raising interest rates." The banks go, "Down," because they need that 1/10 of 1% raise so that the price goes down and they can buy back these bonds in the market and give them to the hedge funds and make their profit. And it's not happening week after week. So I wonder, because the people at the banks are at the Fed, because the Fed's like their big giant club, and I wonder what discussion is going on, because they're like defeating themselves at the moment. And it's really curious to me why.
I mean, Janet Yellen famously took $800,000 as far as I'm aware from a number of hedge funds, primarily Citadel. So I would say she's probably in contact with them. At the very least. Yeah. So someone has asked here, do you think all these changes on the exchanges like the DTCC, NSCC, and all of their new rules, especially mentioning cryptocurrency more and more, do you think this could be an attempt to cover up this story and maybe stop the MOAS from happening, essentially?
I don't think you can. I think it's a runaway train at this point. The best you can do is like apply the brakes and hope for the best. But there's the shorts are behind so much money. It's absolutely ridiculous. Just without naked shares, just think about how many shares there are of AMC alone. There's 500 plus million shares. And every time the price goes up $2, that's $1 billion that the hedge funds are out. And we were at $15 just 2 months ago. And now it's at 40 to 70 in that range. That's a lot of money that they're responsible for. But it's not just AMC. It's also the same thing with GameStop. It's also the same thing with Cost, the same thing with BlackBerry, the same thing with Nokia, the same thing with Bed Bath & Beyond, the same thing with Metamaterial, the same, like you can name 100 companies that, the minute they have $1 gain in price, the hedge funds, someone jumps out a window. It's like they've taken what should have been a mechanism for dealing with a company here and there that may have not had the foundation and the mechanics that they wanted and to short, and they've spread it across hundreds and hundreds of companies. And so now they're all tied together in this like crazy chain reaction that when something happens to one over here, it happens to this one over here as well. It just works its way down the line. And that's why it's runaway train, because they're all connected. All those cards are connected. And I think the rules that are being passed are to protect their members who will survive. And that they are quarantining these groups. And we saw that JP Morgan left the DTCC and are forming their own clearinghouse. That happened yesterday, right? I think it officially happened. And also yesterday, there was an announcement from JP Morgan to all the hedge funds under them. They're like, hey, you might get margin called up to 7 times a day because I think what they're trying to do is get these guys to cover and close positions so that when the shit hits the fan, JP Morgan doesn't get liquidated out of existence. And they didn't want to be part of, they didn't want to be a part of what was going to happen with the DTC and the, dozens and dozens and dozens of hedge funds and market makers and financial institutions that are members. They're like, okay, we can control our folks somewhat, and that might save us. And I think that's kind of where we are, is like every man for himself.
For sure.
Yeah.
When the MOAS happens, guys, I got some cows and chickens. You just come down to Texas. I got you.
Perfect.
Yeah, man. You're assuming that flights will still be going. Although
Josh.
I'll be a millionaire, so I'll be able to afford a private jet. It'll be fine.
That might get you a loaf of bread in the future. We'll find out.
Based on what the diet.
Yeah. My friend and I were discussing this. It's like, what if this makes us super wealthy, but there's no economy left to spend it in? Which is still a fear of mine, if I'm totally honest. Someone else has asked. This is a slightly more complicated question. Maybe you can shed some light on this. Houston says, do you think that they are recycling failure to delivers through ETFs and then reselling them back to retail? Does that make sense? I mean,
the failure to delivers kind of get recycled a couple ways, as far as I know. You have the market makers that generate FTDs. I think I said ETF. I'm going to say FTDs. These FTDs get recycled a few ways. The market makers, if you have market maker status and you get to that T plus 35 date when like you're supposed to cover or else all hell break loose, literally the computer just resets and it starts all over again for the market makers. It's people who aren't market makers that are screwed. And those guys who aren't market makers, what they do is they do a swap. So they trade their debt with somebody else's debt, and by reassigning the name on that, it resets it. Or they go out into the options market, and because of Reg Show says you just have to identify where shares could be, and that can reset it. They buy these deep options that might expire 2-3 years down the line, and they say, hey, look, it's good enough. And so that rule change for rule 005 was supposed to eliminate that loophole, and then they took it off the SEC website, deleted that part, and put it back up. And so these hedge funds can just buy these options, and what they're counting on is that within the next 2 or 3 years, the price of the stock will plummet, and those options, they will never have to bother exercising those options. And even then, they can probably trade those options with somebody else and reset all over again. So it's a lot of can kicking down the road, and we've got to see like how much debt can all of these hedge funds accrue without it affecting everyone else. And the amount of margin that these folks are trading on is absolutely insane. When the economy collapsed in 2008, people were talking about it's wild that they have a 1-to-10 ratio of margin. And now we see like 1-to-50, 1-to-100 if you're trading crypto. And the amount of margin that's been issued by the banks has doubled in the last 18 months. And the market hasn't doubled in the last 18 months. So, we're not seeing a reciprocal trade-off for how much debt is being issued by these banks to all these hedge funds and traders. Even retail traders, retail traders didn't really trade with margin until recently. And so many of them are so over leveraged on the retail trades. It's crazy. That's what took down the Taipei market a couple months ago was they had a chain reaction in margin collapse, and their market lost 9 or 10% in a day, which had never happened before in its entire existence. And now with COVID resurgence in Taiwan, combined with their market, the precariousness of their market, like they're doing really poorly right now. And so much of this market is sitting on these like really, precarious points, and they can just fall off a cliff at any point. And we're being held together with like Scotch tape and staples right now.
I have a question for you guys. All three of us are kind of aware that if like when the MOAS happens, it's going to be the fallout will be pretty catastrophic. Like it's going to be severe. I'm wondering, like you said, Houston, they're kicking the can down the road in as many creative ways as possible. And they're making sure that they're trying to stay ahead of law and being able to like present new creative solutions. They got Plan Z, like Plankton style, in the lemon scented back of the folder cabinet. You know what I'm saying? They got plans down the wazoo, I'm sure, and they have the resources to do so. My question is this: the only thing I could see, and I'm trying to put myself in that situation, the only thing I could see is being a solution that would what big significant events as worlds, and we're a world economy. We're very interconnected at this point. What big events do we see that happens that shifts that dramatically at fundamental levels? And the only thing I can think of is war. War as a black swan event is potentially one of the only scenarios wherein all of this goes poof, and the people at the top get to restructure things and reorganize them in a way that might be a little bit more forward thinking in the future for how they're going to be doing things like this. Like, war is the only situation where the government comes into your company, says, hey, you guys are doing everything this way now, and that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
My family, my father's a conventional warfare strategist for the United States Army for 26 years, and so that was the only thing that kept reoccurring in my head was like, man, the only thing that I've seen in my past study that could be like some kind of solution if I was sitting at the top of the evil of Team Evil would be like, hey, we need to instigate war. We need another Vietnam.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, we just pulled out of Afghanistan because it was 20 years of like, oh, what are we doing here? Yep. And so like I think the problem is that the public's taste for war, it's going to be another generation before people forget what it's like, and we can, we've got the willingness to jump in and do that all over again. We have just so many veterans right now. When you have a war that lasts 20 years, you generate millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of veterans, and it's gnarly. I taught for a college that really went after these veterans for GI Bills. So like 30% of our classrooms were veterans. And some of these guys, they get discharged, and 5 days later they're starting college, and they just got back from Iraq or whatever. Yeah. And it took a toll, and you can see it in their behavior and their actions. And I think the one glaring flaw with that theory is that the taste for war right now is just not there. That it's going to take it's going to take time to be like drum that enthusiasm back up again. We've got short memories, so it could happen maybe sooner than I think. But that's an interesting point, though. That you can do like the Defense Production Act and really just go in and just change the mechanics right away. But
it's something to keep in mind moving forward. It's just a postulate. It's just a postulate. That's because I'm just thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, my response to that would be that I kind of get the impression that we're already in a kind of both Cold War with China, and we're all like, I say we in Britain, we're not quite where you are in America, but I get the impression that you're basically in a cold civil war as well in America, and that and that I also don't think that war looks anything like historical examples anymore. I think that there's no benefit to the establishment of basically any major nation or developed nation to go into full all-out war. Like there is no economic incentive for that, because the destruction caused by it far outweighs the economic benefits that would have been touted in the past, and disrupting the entire economy isn't very profitable. So I struggle to see that there'd be a war, although there's different things that could trigger the sort of action you're talking about.
So a lot of strategists believe that we'll never have anything like World War again because of how globally economically tied we are. But the reason that I'm only proposing this is simply because what if the engine of the reason why we don't go to war, the economy, is the purpose for the war itself? That's where I was like, man, that would actually be really crazy, and actually probably might happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Alex Jones talking about how there is now going to be like more escalating things between the West and China, because China have gone, like, in his mind at least anyway, the global establishment, like, we're fine with China, but now China are getting like too rowdy and bolshy and war hungry and expansionist, and that now there's going to be like, I don't know, more conflict. So I guess we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I feel we've got slightly sidetracked here.
Welcome to my life.
So yeah, well, I guess we got a little bit. We got a little, 15, 20 minutes, guys. Is that good for you, Left? We could go through a few more things.
I can go for hours if you want. I don't care.
Well, it's my mum's birthday, and Houston, I believe it's your birthday. Actually, some people commented.
Oh, nice!
No,
Happy birthday!
There's this ongoing inside joke with the people who follow me, and every single day they wish me a happy birthday.
Oh, man. I love the internet.
Just don't stop.
So, first of all, Charlie Vids was the person who exposed the ETFs, apparently.
Yes.
So we have to give him credit for that. So Charlie Vids, shout out if you're listening or see this. Thanks for your great work. I've emailed you today. Let me on your show, please. So the thing that we haven't really mentioned actually yet is the crypto dividend. Now, there's been I haven't had a chance to read much today. I haven't seen anything that happened vaguely, but today was meant to be the day. Of course, don't hype dates, but hype every date. I think is the theory now. Is like, we don't get hyped for specific dates. We get hyped for every day.
I think it's 4:20 p.m. I'm not sure which time zone it is. Might be a Grapevine, Texas time zone when it's supposed to be released.
Right. Okay. So now when I spoke to Carl Hagberg and to Suzanne Trimbath, neither of them were particularly convinced that the crypto dividend would solve the problem of naked short selling, or at least expose it. They were very cynical about the idea, or perhaps didn't understand the underlying technology of using an NFT, which can't be replicated. What are your thoughts on that? And is the infrastructure, from what you've seen that GameStop are putting in place, a suggestion that, even though they've denied it, that they are preparing to do something like that?
I'll go. From the DD I've absorbed on it, I think the potential for it is absolutely diabolical. The guy that GameStop brought in to run this program, he created a financial company that made an NFT that will basically include in the code all of your crypto assets in one coin. And so your crypto assets can't be fungible, they can't be stolen, they can't even stuff, because the coin maintains that ledger. And the speculation is that GameStop isn't just going to issue a coin as like one coin per share and have a currency. They're going to issue an NFT that records how many shares you own. And the ledger will be able to announce exactly the ownership at any moment across the entire stock market for GameStop, international and local. And so that coin will show in an instant exactly how many synthetic shares are out there, and will finally be a census, an exact census as to ownership of GameStop, which everyone wants. And I think that is a pretty rad, big brain move. And that not only will this be a non-fungible coin that short hedge funds cannot duplicate, but it will finally give us the exact number of shares that are out there and show how much has been naked shorted. And having that data will, I think, freak the hell out of the banks and the prime brokers that have issued the margins to these short hedge funds, because they'll go, oh my God, this is so much worse than anyone had told us before. And you won't be able to hide stuff in default swaps. You won't be able to hide stuff in long puts and calls. You won't be able to hide these things anymore, because it will be listed at all times on the ledger of these coins. And
that's wicked.
Yeah, it's gnarly. And if it is that badass, like if people on Reddit are speculating that, then there's definitely the professionals at GameStop who are working on this blockchain technology that have thought of it too.
Phew, that's
Someone
wicked.
is saying in the comments that the coin went live this morning
This morning,
at
okay.
4:20 a.m.
Oh,
Pacific
4:20 a.m.
Standard
Okay.
Time, and that it is already. I know, like there is clearly some fucking hero in the scheduling department
I
at
love
GameStop.
this.
Like I want to know who it is. I want them to get a medal. Like whoever, because even just there was the shareholders meeting was like 6-9. What else was on 4:20? I can't remember. Or the I can't remember what was 4:20.
There's like the
there was
Pikachu
something.
plushie was released on 4:20, and
Oh yeah,
You got to put him in the acknowledgments of the book. Got to get him
Yeah.
in the Josh.
if anyone works at GameStop and you know who is doing this, please email me and tell me who it is. It's josh@thegist.co.uk. Please tell me who this is, and I will send them free copies of my book for being that much of a legend. So, do we think the market is about to crash? That was, the final thing that I wanted to discuss here. Like, are we going to see GameStop and all of the short selling be the catalyst for this, for a market crash?
I feel like it's headed that way.
Yeah, I think it can go either way. A market crash can trigger the MOAS, and the MOAS can trigger a market crash. Mainly because of the way how over leveraged everyone is on margin. If the MOAS happens and those hedge funds get liquidated, right? They've got all these assets that are, their municipal bonds, their treasury bonds, their blue chip stocks, index funds, ETFs, whatever solid assets they have get sold. And if they're lucky, they get sold in private bids to other financial institutions. If they're not lucky, they get sold on the open market. And that sell-off will drive the price down for all of these blue chips across the board, which means other hedge funds that may have been healthy 2 hours earlier will see their asset value shrink enough that they might get margin called on their leverage. And then it's just a chain reaction across the market. Or we have a problem where there's a credit crunch, or there's a corporate debt bubble, and and if there's a credit crunch with the banks, then consumers aren't getting the credit they need to make purchases, and corporations aren't getting the credit they need to artificially inflate their stock price with stock buybacks, which has been going on since at least the tax cuts made by the U.S. government in 2018. And what we see is 109% of corporate profits have been going into stock buybacks. And that's because, these executives get bonuses if they meet certain price targets on the stock. So they'll be like, okay, we're going to take out a huge loan from Goldman Sachs, and we're going to buy back 30 million shares of our stock and drive the price up. And they drive that price up, and all of a sudden they hit the $85 target price, and the CEO gets reigned with $50 million in cash as a bonus. And it's happening across the board, corporation after corporation after corporation after corporation, especially in the United States. And they're not spending on R&D. They're not spending on retooling. They're not spending on investing on new plants or worker safety or anything else that would help them down the line. They're spending it all on stock buybacks to artificially drive these prices up. And the minute they don't have access to debt, to corporate debt to do that, the stock price bottoms out, because they've wasted their future on buying back stock for 6 people to get bonuses. And if we see a credit crunch in the price of the stocks go back to where they should be based on their fundamentals, then again we see all those assets shrink once more. Margin calls happen across the board. And we got to think about Corona too. Like, the Delta variant and the Lambda variant, if we get a little bit of a mutation in the spike protein, all of the vaccines everyone had are useless, and we go right back to shutting down again. And the last time we shut down, the market collapsed 37% in a matter of days. So if we get a market collapse like that, again, margin calls across the board. And so when those margin calls happen, what they're doing is they have to buy back all the stocks they're short on, and all the stocks they're short on, we own. And so we're in this weird position where for the first time in market history, the average retail investor may actually come out on top during a market collapse. And it's a weird place to be because that's never happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a really weird situation to be in, and it's that's what I guess makes it so fascinating. It's like you can guess and you can say, oh well, this happened in the past, but there's not really very much like precedent for any of this. Like we're in totally completely just like what is it that Barbosa says the end of Pirates of the Caribbean when him and Jack are fighting? It's like, oh, you're off the edge of the map here there be monsters. It's like that's kind of how it feels right now.
No, we're totally in uncharted territory in a lot of ways, and not just like financially, but I mean like as a society, it's exciting in my opinion. I love where we're at. It's one of the most exciting times to be here. I think who's the guy that says that? Joe Rogan always is like, this is the most interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, every day there's something new. It's like I don't know a point in my life where I've developed so many wrinkles so fast in my brain. Like every day I'm like, whoa, I didn't even thought of that. That's crazy. And you know,
yeah, you can feel the wrinkle forming.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that should help you answer this question. So some guy has asked this a couple of times, and I said I would ask. I'm not 100% on exactly what he means by it. Again, Houston, maybe you'll have more insight than me. He says, would love to hear your thoughts about non-repudiation concerns / solutions. Does that mean anything to you? I've been Googling, but I can't really sort of tell what it means.
I mean, to repudiate someone is to like chastise them, right?
Well, it says that non-repudiation is usually applies to cases of a formal contract, a communication, or the transfer of data. Its aim is to ensure that an individual or organization bound by the terms of a contract or the parties involved in a particular communication or document transfer are unable to deny the authenticity of their signatures on contract documents or that they were the originator of a particular message or transfer. I assume this has to do with stock ownership.
Okay. So like maybe not necessarily stock ownership, but maybe ownership of synthetics.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as in, maybe this is a way for people to. I'm gonna have to look into this. I'm sorry, person who asked this. I can't remember.
No, it's an interesting question. Okay, so we know from previous articles, Matt Taibbi wrote in Rolling Stone about naked shorting like in 2010 and how it brought down Bear Stearns, and it's like an hour and a half read. It's a long article. And in that, he talked about the loopholes in reg show where, when someone's issuing a naked share that they're selling, they're writing in anything. Like, they're supposed to identify who has the stock, and they're putting in like 3 dashes and just selling the stock. And so maybe when they issue these fake shares electronically, maybe they aren't even putting the real name of the person who issued it in there. I have no idea. They're just like putting it out there, and I have no idea how that fast system at the DTCC even like assigns ownership of that stuff across the brokerages. Like, what if there's a typo and it says Cittasmell instead of Citadel? Like, does that still trace back to? I have no idea, because the DTCC won't let anyone ever look at that stuff.
I would say that I would personally, and this is just from what I understand, I wouldn't be too concerned about that because there's a digital footprint everywhere. And all those interactions, if there's an investigation, they're subject to full X-ray, full, there's nothing you can hide. Even with what was the instance where Hillary Clinton was like using the wrong server for private. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
totally accidentally.
Everything's subject to X-ray. Everything's digital. I wouldn't be too concerned about that, and that's just my opinion.
So you know more about computers than I do, so I'm just going to defer to you.
So someone has asked here also about how there's been a lot of talk about cyber attacks like there was the ones on like different power lines, gas infrastructure, and on the financial markets, and they're kind of saying that maybe there's going to be some like they're basically suggesting that there's going to be a cyber attack, and then all of a sudden, oh, the financial markets have all been wiped and we've no idea who owns anything. And I guess that's kind of the point of his comment, that he's suggesting that they will go so far as to either fake or to make a cyber attack on themselves in order to get out of this.
so we would have the big banks and financial institutions doing their own Tyler Durden and blowing themselves up.
Basically,
all Fight Club, like
yeah.
Don't make me do it. Yeah. It's that's pretty wild.
Hartman in South Park. It's like, I'm gonna do it, you guys. You got to take it seriously. I'm totally gonna kill myself.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, at this point, I don't think anything's out of the realm, but there are a lot of players on our side of this who stand to make a boatload of money. And, you got to think about, you have, whatever your political philosophy, we know that big banks and financial institutions pay a lot of money to politicians to get them to do their bidding, right? And if you're a politician and you want to look at what side of your bread is buttered, do you take a bunch of money from a company that might be out trillions of dollars in the MOAS, or take a bunch of money from a company that stands to win trillions of dollars if there's a MOAS? And so
who's going to be able to line your pockets after it?
Exactly. So you might have to think long term, and that's in that article Matt Taibbi wrote 10, 11 years ago about Bear Stearns and naked shorting. He talked about how there was a meeting of the 4 big U.S. investment banks and the Federal Reserve and the Treasury and the SEC, and they got together and they said, we want to kill Bear Stearns. And the feds were like, all right. So, and the next week, Bear Stearns was dead. And so, there are things that go on behind the scenes that we won't have access to until probably 2, 3, 4 years later, when the minutes of the meeting come out or whatever. And my guess is that the fate has already been decided. That it's just the date we don't know, and that's kind of where I think we're sitting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be a fucking wild ride. So yeah, to wrap this up, I have to go and have dinner with my mom for her birthday. So yeah, I don't think she's watching, but happy birthday, Mom, if you are. So yeah, everyone that's listened, thank you very much for tuning in. Houston, William, it's been an absolute pleasure. Anyone that's enjoyed what we've talked about here, please go to wenmoon.com, WEN-moon.com, and check out the trailer for the book, some more information there about it, some of the research and background interviews I've done, the story of why I decided to write it, and a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today. So guys, do you want to just give a shout out to where people can find you and your stuff if they want to?
On YouTube is Houston Wade, or you can just search Houston We Have a Problem. I'll pop up. And on Twitter at The Wooston. That's Houston with a W.
I like that.
Yeah, that was to evade the ban, right? Yeah. Oh, no, sorry, you definitely didn't do that. That's
no, I didn't do that.
That was some other guy.
Yeah, and, Stonk News Network, everybody. Shout out to Stonk News Network, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram at William_E_Steele, or at Will_E_Steele.
Lovely. So yeah, guys, thank you very much. Everyone, check out the links for those. I've put them in the chat. I will stick them in the description below as well. I'm doing that right now. And so yeah, thanks very much, guys. It's been great.
Thank you.